Welcome. Tonight we are going to be working in colored pencil and PanPastels to draw a black cat. The link for the reference photo is in the video description below, so those of you who are going to complain, and trust me, I hear you every week, wanting the reference photo on the screen, you can just go download it. And then you have it. You can put it anywhere on the screen you like. So tonight I'm working on, I ended up drawing this on a gray. It's kind of a darkish gray. It's a little darker than it looks on the camera. And I traced out my cat, or draw it out however you want. If you want to freehand it, I would freehand it on another piece of paper and then trace that. The reason is we want our work to be clean. If we just draw on this paper, we're gonna have eraser marks all over. I don't know about you, but I do a lot of erasing when I freehand. So we want to draw that out, and then all I do, once that's drawn on my clean tracing paper, take a piece of transfer paper, slide that on under, and then a little stylus, ballpoint pen, whatever you want, and you just lightly, you don't need to push hard with this, go over that, and that will get us our drawing on here cleanly. I am working on Cans and Me 10s. This is a 5x7. I'm working on the smooth side. I used to work on the rough side whenever I use PanPastels, and that works fine. The theory being pastels, typically, they like a little bit more grip. PanPastels stick so well. I realized recently that I can get away with just the smooth side, and that way it makes it easier when I go onto the colored pencil. So that's a nice bonus there. And yeah, so there we go. There is our drawing. I'm going to start by lightly doing the background. I'm going to let some of the gray of my background show through. My goal is not to completely cover that. And oh, I guess this one's clean on the other side. So on this soft tool, this side's actually clean. That's from the fox I've been working on. Let's just flip that over. I can reuse that side. Okay, and let's see, colors. I'm going to be using some greens and blues. Let's slide that away so you can kind of see. I'm going to start with this olive green. I think that's chromium oxide, chromium, yep, chromium oxide green. And let's get a little bit of that in here. And I'm going to let that fade out. My goal is not to fill all of that background. I'm just going to lightly go over that. No, I would rather this go over the cat a little bit than not quite touch the cat. You don't want to get that halo effect where the paper is kind of like you've got an outline where you're afraid to cover too much there. I would rather get a little green on the cat and then go over it with the pencils. Let's see, which blue do I want to pull in there? Let's go with the ultramarine. Just a little in there. Now you can use, if you've got the colorless blender, the PanPastel colorless blender, I have that. It makes things blend a little bit smoother, a little bit easier, but you also don't need it. Somebody asked in our Discord, our Patreon Discord group this week, was asking about whether or not they needed to buy that. It's handy. It does make things blend smoother. Like I feel like I don't go through as much of my colors. I can kind of stretch them out. It's almost like adding water to your acrylic paints. Thins them out down a little bit, but they also go a lot further. So but I'd been working with PanPastels for what, 2, 3 years, 4 years? I don't know how long for, 5, gosh, it's been a while now. And I didn't even get that the colorless blender until a few months ago. So obviously you don't need it. It works just fine without, but it is pretty handy. I kind of like it. Just this nice soft, and then fades into the gray. And again, mine's a little bit darker. Let's pull a little bit more green in there. There we go. And do anything else? No, I think I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just going to flip my soft tool. This is a smaller brush. I'm going to flip, actually, no, that color is fine for what I'm doing. I lied, I'm leaving it as it is. I'm going to start with my browns, and I'm going to mix, not rich, what the heck. This is red iron oxide that I just stuck my finger in, so let's clean that off so I don't end up with fingerprints where I didn't want them. That's so ending up on my face. Okay, and I'm just going to go a little bit around the face. We've got a little bit of this reddish brown color that's going to be on the ruff of the cat. Now, it's not going to stay this red. And actually, let me see if I can fix that camera really quick. What was I doing next? Cat, working on the cat. So we've got that in there. We've got a lot of blues. We've got a little bit more of the browns in here, or that reddish color. Just couple of spots, little eyebrows, a little bit of a pink cream color inside the ear. So I just mixed red, the red oxide, and white to get that cream tone. You can actually pull a little bit of that in here too. Now I'll go ahead and do the black, the darkest black. So as I do this, don't just fill in the entire cat with the darkest black you have. And you can do this, even if you don't have PanPastels, you're doing it in colored pencil, it would be the same thing. We want to keep the darkest, like you want variation in actual black and then various values moving up through that. If everything's solid black, he's gonna look really flat. There's a lot of blue we're gonna wanna pull in here, blues and grays. So we've got the darkest area here. And I just turn the soft tool to the side so I can get a thinner line as needed, and then the thinnest lines I'll get with my colored pencil. Now this guy's pretty fluffy, so I'm keeping that wispy look as I move up the ears. See how I'm working this soft tool in the direction of the fur. And all the supplies I'm using are listed in the video description if you are not sure what they are. And I've had people ask if you can just use makeup like applicators like these guys. Yes, you technically can. Actually, this one I think is a soft tool. You can use stuff like this. The problem is they're kind of awkward, so they're okay for little areas, but like big things, your fingers kind of get in the way of that, whereas with this, see how it's angled? I can hold it here and my fingers aren't touching the paper. It's more like using a palette knife. And then his little chin just kind of fades out. It's not really defined. I think it's all that fluff. This is going to get lighter, so I'm not pushing really hard. I didn't load that with a whole lot of the black. And then this is a lot lighter too, so we'll just let that fade out a bit. Going to reload with a bit more black. This doesn't have to be perfect, but go for close. Make your life easier later. If you're having to fix everything, that just takes a lot more time. Some little fluff. See again how I'm watching the direction that fluff moves. Okay, and I'm going to use, actually you can use this little guy to fill in the eye with the green and yellow. I'm going to start with yellow, and I'm going to use the yellow. I believe that's, what was that weird name that I insisted wasn't a word? And you guys had me look up. Darilide, I guess it's a flower. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to mix that with some white. And I'm going to start the eyes with that color, which is obviously missing the green. But if I start with green, it's going to be harder to lighten it up to the yellow where I need. Yellow being lighter and more translucent usually, it's going to be a lot easier to put that in first and then add green where I need to. And the little bits of orange around the edge, I'm going to do that later with colored pencils. So I'm not worried about that right now. Let's go ahead and pull in some green. Looks more like a phthalo green. I'm going to mix phthalo and a little bit darker there. We're going to go right around the eyes, or the pupil, I mean. And I'm not even going to worry about the highlight or the pupil. I'll do that with the colored pencil later. Although while I've got this in my hand, I may as well do the little nose. And I wiped some off so that there's not a lot of black here where I want it lighter. Okay, I'm going to come back with the darker one now and darken up the darker bits a bit more. And he's gonna look really scary at this stage. That is totally normal. Don't let it scare you. If he looks good right now, I'm a little bit concerned about what your end result is gonna be like, because he really shouldn't be good yet. Okay, now I'm gonna start mixing some blue. I had used ultramarine blue before, so I'll do the same. And I've got that mixed with my black. I'll pull a little bit of my light blue over that. So these are the shiny marks. Now, this is not the exact same blue as the reference photo. It does not matter. Don't worry too much about the exact color. What I'm worried about are my values. Are my lights light enough, my darks dark enough? That is the only thing that really matters here. If you find yourself feeling a little bit frozen, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do next because I don't know what color to use, you are focused on the wrong thing, because the color is not the thing that is going to make your work look better. The thing that makes your work look better are your contrast. Darks dark enough, lights light enough. I mean, if the color mattered that much, then black and white pieces wouldn't look good. The reason that they look realistic is because the value, it's the lights and the darks in there being correct. Get a little bit of blue right in there, right around the side of the head, and that is going to fade out into the background a bit. I'm just mixing my ultramarine blue and then that light blue. Now, one of the things that you're not really seeing is every time I load this, I tap it. I've got a paper towel on my easel below me. I just tap it once so that it's not too heavily loaded. Otherwise, things get a little crazy on the canvas. Got a little bit of that blue right along the back here. Now, as expression, when we get those eyes in right, and we'll come back to talking about why that's going to completely change his expression from crackhead kitty to like this softer look. And it's because the eyes right now look like they're staring at you, like there were substances involved. When we do the shading is very important. And I say that kind of jokingly because I want you to really remember, like, if you don't get that shadow on the upper right in this area when we get to that stage, your animal looks like a crackhead, unless it's an owl or a bird, which, I mean, also fitting. So that is just something to keep in mind there. The shading will completely change the perspective, or not the perspective, the expression. Same thing with people. When you don't get that shadow under the upper eyelid, they look like they're staring at you like, again, substances. So we want to really make sure to get that shading. But I point that out because I want you to really notice right now how he looks really unsavory. Look how much blue I'm using. Like, it's a decent amount that we want to fit in there. I'm going to even start pulling a little bit of magenta in with the blue. So now I'm mixing all three colors. I'm going to pull a little bit of that over the red so I get this pretty purple. Let's get a little bit more. A little bit more of a shadow in here. A little bit of that purple right above the bridge of the nose, or right above the nose. And we've got some purple down here. Oops, I just grabbed brown for some reason. I don't know why. I'm just going to tap that off. Now notice how many colors we use in black. We tend to look at an animal that's black. I've heard this a lot, that people are afraid, like a black lab, to draw, that it's too hard because it's just all black. What colors do you use? All the colors. There are so many colors in black animals. Same thing if you're drawing a person who has black hair. You're going to include a lot of colors in there. Now it's going to depend on the texture of the hair, what colors get pulled in, but usually you're going to have a lot. Okay, let's touch up a little bit more with the darker blacks where it needs to go, and then we're going to spray this and get started with colored pencil. And what I'm doing, it's essentially like sculpting. I'm creating dimension where those shadows and highlights are right now. Like there's no detail, but I should start getting a little bit of dimension in here. We want to create form, not just flat lines. Python said the animal looks like Christian Lassen when you didn't get that shadow under the eyelid. That's a very good way to put that. If you know, you know. Just a little bit more shading. Now, one thing you have got to break the habit of, and I know some of you are going to have this, is using your hand to wipe away shavings or, in this case, little bits of dust. Don't do that. With PanPastel, I just blow on it or have this little rocket thing. This works great. Just squeeze it and it blows off any dust without you accidentally spitting on your artwork. Ask me how I know that's an issue. Actually, I had a student that did that once. She'd been eating In-N-Out. Yeah, that did not come off her artwork. Okay, that is good. We're going to lightly mist that. I'm going to use Spectrafix, and I've got it in this fine mist sprayer. I'm just going to lightly go over that. Let me make sure my hairdryer is plugged in. Yeah, we're good. Now the Spectrafix is helping that pastel to adhere to the paper more long term. It really stays there. But if I take my hand and rub it across that, there's no amount of Spectrafix I'm going to put on this that is going to make it smudge proof. This needs to be framed behind glass. What it's doing is it kind of seals it down. It helps it to just really adhere better. So let's say I wanted many, many layers of PanPastel. In every few layers, throw a coat of that on there. It just really helps it to stick. When you frame your artwork, whenever you're using pastels, chalk, or anything like that, like even not just PanPastels, but regular PanPastels, sorry, itchy nose. Oh, this is my allergy season. But anyway, you'll notice on the bottom of the mat where the pastel starts to kind of collect a little bit of dust. It's not that bad, but you do want to seal it, and it just helps it stick to the paper better. So there we go. Okay, I am going to start. Let's put a piece of glassine up here so I can rest my hand. This glassine is actually really large. It was from the fox I was working on this week. Okay, and I'm going to start with, let's get the blue for the eye and white for the shine and black. And I've got my polychromos out right now. I don't know if I'll end up using my other colors. We'll see if I have to grab something else. I'm being lazy. These are just what I've had out for this week's Patreon project. And I'm just using a little handheld comb sharpener. And just because you can write with a pencil does not mean it's sharp enough. You want it really sharp. That's going to help it to the pencil. Not only do you have more control, it gets into all the little nooks and crannies of the paper so you don't end up with that grainy, gritty look. Let's go ahead and throw that shine in now. I want to make sure that's rounded off. I'm going to push it a little bit harder so that's nice and dark. And let's get blue on that outer edge of the shine. Just using a light blue there. And if that doesn't show up enough, I'll probably grab some more opaque pencils. I'll save that for now. I need a orangey color. Let's go with this one is Sanguine. No, I've not had any. Well, I don't use the Spectrafix bottle that the Spectrafix comes in, but let's see, Fly Me to the Moon said, have you had any issues with the sprayer with the Spectrafix? Does it get clogged? No, but I don't know if you can see, look at how the thing, you can see there's like a plastic like container inside the container, and that thing is, oh, you can't see there. It is getting all wrinkly, so I think that's gonna have to be replaced, but I've never had the sprayer get clogged. So I'm going to take this sanguine and I'm going to go right around the edges. Look at that little detail. What a difference that starts making in these eyes. And let's grab the white. I'm going to lighten a bit at the bottom. And this is just the polychromos white, so it'll lighten it without being too opaque. If I need it to be really opaque, I want to go with something that's a bit more, well, opaque, like the Caran d'Ache Luminance or the Derwent Drawing or Derwent Light Fast pencils. But here, where I just want to lighten it a bit, this is the better one. And if you go a little too crazy, like I just did, let's grab another green. I'm just going to pull that green back down a little bit around the eye there. And let's see what else. So now we need to start getting these shadows. I'm going to use a little bit of black there. And then I'm going to switch over to the green on top of that. I'm pushing a lot harder here. Now I do want to use a more opaque white. I'm going to use my Pablo white and see how that works because it's out and I'm too lazy to get something else. Yeah, I'm probably going to have to stop being lazy and grab, oh, I'm being lazy for no reason. I've got a white right here in Derwent Drawing. There we go. Now a little bit more detail. And I'm going to focus most of my detail around the eyes, and it'll loosen up as we move out. So the majority of the time is being spent here. I'm going to use the Pablo white just right along that edge. Got a little bit right here too. Make sure that inner corner is rounded and then the shadow comes out. I'm pushing pretty hard on the definition for that upper lid and then into the shadows here. So I start putting a lot more pressure. A little dark there. Now that right here, see how light that is? That is too much. Go over that. Calm down. I'm going to round that off a little bit more. Do the same thing up here. Let that dark fade. Okay, I actually need an extender or a different black. This is getting uncomfortable with how much I'm gonna have to use that black tonight. It may be worth just grabbing a new pencil or figuring out where my extender is. 1 second. One of these days, I'm going to go through and organize the studio. Although in that case, I'll just lose everything. Organizing means now I can't find anything. So that's not always ideal. Does anyone else have that problem when they organize things? Suddenly everything goes missing. Okay, so now I'm going to focus on some of these dark areas, and actually let's grab another blue. You'll work. This is, I think, light ultramarine. Yep, that's perfect. So I'm going to use mainly focus right now. Just keep it simple. I'll use the black to define the dark areas and that mid ultramarine. And I had, which is this one? This is light red violet. That should work for the more purpley in between tones. Yep, just for tinting the color a little bit. And I'm pushing pretty hard here. And watch the direction of the fur. And still watching the direction of the fur. Now, as I get into here, the fur is really, really short. Don't try to put in individual hairs on the nose there. It's just going, you'll get that werewolf scraggly, like hairs growing where it doesn't need to be growing look. That is not, the fur on the bridge of the nose is super short. And we have Gibson, who wants to have a whole discussion about whether or not he really wants that treat versus a different treat. Maybe you could get him something else. Like Gibson's super picky compared to Wade. Around the eye here, I'm going to start pulling blue and really watch the direction of the fur. This is where we start to do a lot of refining the shape. See, even here, I'm not drawing in individual bits of fur, just where's that shadow and look how dark it needs to be there. But then how light we want this blue to be. We're going to switch over to that violet color right above the nose. And if I want a few little highlights, I'm going to switch with, stick to the polychromos just because it's not too opaque. Very lightly go across this. Now this gives you that more velvety look, which is perfect for the bridge of the nose. This, I want it to be a little bit grainy or gritty to get that texture. I'm going to pull the black down a little bit further though. Coming back over here, same thing. Let's worry about, pay attention to where the blue is and which direction the fur goes. See how it moves its way out. I am constantly looking at that photo. You want to spend more time looking at your photo than your artwork. That's a hard thing to get in the hang of doing. I need a highlight here. That blue's not showing up enough, so I'll switch it away. I don't care if it's the right color. I just need the values there, which also means I need to make this one out here a little bit more. See how much longer the fur strokes get in here. The other thing to notice, the fur, one, it has to overlap. That's huge. It has to overlap. You don't want individual lines. That looks like confetti. Look how it groups together. And then the other thing is just your values and watching, well, still clumps. I guess it's kind of the same thing. How long is the fur? Which direction is it moving in? Little lines in here where his whiskers are going to come through, which makes such a difference. Oh my gosh, that's probably my favorite part in drawing animals is when you get to put the whiskers in. It makes such a difference, and this whole area gets really dark. His little floofy chin. But the other thing, so there was another thing. The other thing with these guys, when you've got long fur, you don't need all the individual strands. They're more solid, fluffy. You want it to look soft. The fur is just kind of mushed together. It's one mass of cotton versus individual strands. And individual strands gives you a very wiry texture. Think any wire hair dog, wire hair doxy. My brain went away. But you don't want, like even here, I'm getting a little bit more sketchy than I probably want that end result to be. Same thing in here. This is just fluff. Like it's so cottony. You don't have a bunch of individual strands. It's just kind of mushed together. Now the mat is going to cut a lot of this off. But I want to make sure, I just pulled the color way out farther than it needs to be, just so I don't have to worry about if I didn't quite go far enough, if that makes sense. See how it just overlaps? Really fluffy. I'm going to make a little bit more of a transition. I don't want just the black into the blue. I'm going to take that violet right in between those two, which looks way more violet in person than you're seeing there. I'll have to show you the color saturation. Actually, let me see if I can fix that. Color saturation's a little bit low. That looks better. Oh, look at you working as you're supposed to, Elgato. I knew you could do it. I'm going to take a little bit of white, pull some highlights on top of this. And again, this isn't going to make it white. This is the polychromos white, so it's going to be more translucent. Even on something like this, where normally I don't use the pencils like that, but here, because I want that soft fluff, and it's okay if you've got that grainy, gritty look, just works for the fluff. So I'm going to hold the pencil to the side, but I still have to watch the direction. See how it curves? None of these lines are completely smooth. Everything is at least slightly curved. So get up into this ear, we can darken that up. We've got a few little hairs sticking out. I'm going to pull a little bit more purple in there to darken that up. And then let's use some blue, and we'll use some white for some hairs sticking out. Why is ear fur or ear fluff in animals so adorable, but so unattractive in humans? Random thoughts that go through my head while I'm drawing. I mean, you never hear anyone tell an older gentleman that their ear fluff is cute. But seriously, that's adorable. Okay, let's work over here. We've got this highlighted blue, and even though this isn't light enough, I'm going to start with this. See how it's more solid? I'm not even worried about a bunch of individual strands. We've got that more blue up in here as well, and over this little eyebrow. And then where we want it much lighter, we'll take the white and lightly go over that. Don't put too many hairs in there. Again, he's very, very soft, cottony. The ear gets cut off by the mat. This whole area gets chopped. And we've got a few little individual strands we'll stick in there. And back to the blue. Oh, we've got more cute ear fluff. So I'm starting with black, getting that inside, and then I'll come through with the blue and then a bit of white. A little bit more black up here. I'm going to go right over some of these and tone it down so it's not just flat white. See, I'm taking the black over the ends. So it looks like I've got a little bit of a highlight there. That's another thing when you're drawing fur, you're going to get more dimension if one strand isn't just one color all the way through. See how in this case it went black, faded to white, and then back down to black. Oops, let's not start with white. Let's start with blue. Pay attention. Okay, we were working on the blue. And we've got this side of the mouth we need to focus on. Round off his little snoot. We've got these rows, these lines that come down. I'm going to highlight those a little bit more over here too. A little highlighting on it, or some detailing around the eye. And then we have the magenta. Let's pull that in here. I'm going to let that fade into the fur that gets longer as it comes out. That needs to fade into the black there. See, one of the things that I see people make a mistake of a lot of times when they're drawing animals is that they try to force lines. Like if you look at the reference photo, which you can have anywhere on your screen you want. So those of you who are getting ready to complain that it's not on my screen, you can make that happen. I'm not letting that go because it's funny. I'm hilarious. Anyway, the point, move on, Lisa. The point here, look at how this fades. Don't force a line. Don't try to force the jaw. If you can't see, if you look at that reference photo and it fades into a shadow, let it fade into a shadow. When you start trying to force detail, it looks weird. I see people do this all the time on dogs where half the face is in shadow. That makes for a striking portrait. Leave it in shadow. Don't try to pull out the eye detail that you can't see. It doesn't look the same anymore and you're not gonna get it right, I promise you. So let that fade. Most of this is gonna get cut off by the mat as well. Get that in there. Then we've got the blue fluff is also in the rough here. A little bit of a shadow in there. Now I'm going to come back through with the white right on that edge. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hold this to the side so I get that softer look. It's got a bit of a little lion mane going on here. Pull these shadows back in where they belong. This whole area is way too light. Now, another thing that you can do if you need things to be softer, go back to your PanPastels. You can layer these right over your colored pencils. So if I want a softer black, but the pencil's a little harsher than I want, let's just add that on top. And look how nice and soft that result is. Same thing down in here where it's a little bit scraggly. Let that fade out. If I go too dark, no big deal. I can come right back on top with the colored pencil. You can layer back and forth. The Canson Me10s does a pretty good job of taking multiple layers. You can just soften some of that out. And even here, let's say I want a little bit more with the blue to be a bit softer. Same thing, I can just lightly go over that, soften that out. So it lets it just blur off to the side there. And let's come through with some light blue and white. Get a few more highlights over here. Just softens that out. Now let's give it some whiskers. That's my favorite part. I'm going to use my Pablo, my Caran d'Ache Pablo white. The reason, it's just more opaque. I'm not a huge fan of the Caran d'Ache Pablos for most things. It's not a brand that I would say run out and buy the whole set. I use it mainly for final details and only a few colors, like the black and the white. I've got a few colors, but mainly black and white. I'll use them for when I'm working on sanded paper, whether I'm using powder blender with colored pencils and those final layers where I want a waxy or thin pencil for like tiny little lines, or in this case, just some little details like the whiskers. Make sure these overlap. You don't want them just spread out evenly. It won't look very natural. I'm not pushing very hard at all. These ones are much more translucent. And then I can come back on a few of these that are there and just make it stand out a bit more. Not everywhere. I want that variation where it fades from like really bright, really in your face to not. So I get a more natural look. A few up here. Few tiny little details. Since we got this done pretty quickly, I can spend a little bit more time fussing over some details. Like the little lines on his face here. I wanted to define that a little bit more. And then some of these I want it to stand out more, so I'm going to switch to, yeah, that one is the white. Pull out a few highlights right on the edge of his little mouth. That's going to help this to come forward like it's sticking out more. It gives it a little bit more dimension. I don't know why I'm putting detail in here. The matte covers it. I'll show you what it looks like with the matte. See what I mean. Where is the matte? So this is how it will fit in the matte. So a lot of this gets covered by that. But I'm not done. I've got some more time, so I can sit and fuss over some stuff. Like I actually want to make my eyes a little bit darker. I'm going to use Sanguine right up in those edges. Let's pull a little bit more color. Not because that's what's in the reference photo, but because I think it will look nice. Actually, I'm going to add a Sanguine in a few areas. I think that will look good. Oh yeah, that looks really good with the blues and the purples. I want to pull even more white. And this gets cut off with a matte, so not sure why I'm fussing over that, but I am. This whole area can use a little bit of work on correcting the direction of the fur. So let's see, this whole area, let's darken that up. And little things like this, just changing where that dark is will completely change with the cat. Like that just changed its expression completely by pulling that dark out further. Little details like that. What I normally will do is take a step back from it. So let's say I think I'm done. I'm gonna come back the next day and look at it again because I may notice something, and usually when I do that, I won't even do it with a reference photo. Look at it, let it stand alone as its own piece. One of the things that a lot of people have a problem with, actually somebody posted this over in the Patreon Discord this week, which was just such a good example because it happens so often. She is working on a macaw, sorry for calling you out, but it looks gorgeous. I don't have the reference photo. It's the one, my lesson with the 12 colored pencils. I don't have the reference photo out. But it looks like, looking at her artwork as a standalone, stunning. I mean, the contrast, the values, oh my gosh, stunning. She hated it and was ready to throw it away because it didn't look just like the reference photo. Sometimes you want to go ahead and use the reference photo, go for close. But when you hit that point where you're like, oh, it's not close enough, I don't like it, put the reference photo away. Look at the artwork on its own merits, by itself, without the reference photo, and decide if you need to make changes. Now, I'm not saying throw the reference photo away. You're going to go back and forth and look at the two. But sometimes we need to look at the artwork on its own, because our goal is not necessarily to make a perfect copy. I mean, while we're working, our brain is saying, yes, copy it exactly. But as an artist, we want to improve on that. We want to go ahead and make adjustments, put our own tastes, our own things in that. Maybe you use more teals than the reference photo calls from. That would be me. You know, things like that, something that's just you. That is okay. It doesn't need to be exact. Put the reference photo away. Come back the next day, 2 days, 3 days later with fresh eyes when you have not looked at the reference photo, then decide if you like the artwork. So that is a much better way to judge your work on whether or not you like it very much or not, or if it needs more work. When you have sat in front of this for as long as I have, even tonight, as quick as this project is, just sitting in front of it for very long, you kind of lose sight of what exactly you're doing. Just some little teeny details, makes the fur look shiny. Oh, I like this guy. Few little details. Don't overdo the details in here. We just want to get the hint of some of these bits of fur. I am so happy with this one. See, these hairs right there are a little on the scraggly side. That's where I want to come back through. Let's wipe some of this off, and I want to use some white, a little bit of blue, and let's soften that out, because that fur is supposed to be soft. Much better, much softer. And I'm just going to shade that a little bit with the pencil on the edge. And let that fade into the black so it's not just such a harsh line right there. That's much better. Oh my gosh, I love how this one came out. Oh, I gave myself goosebumps. Okay, let's figure out where I need to sign it. So when you want to sign your work, I don't like, where's my buttons? I don't want to just sign it down here because I know that's going to get cropped by the mat. This is designed, it's supposed to be a 5x7, so about like that. And I am going to sign you. Do I want to sign you here? Here. I like the balance here. I want the weight here and not there. So I'm just gonna. There we go. So the signature, it seems like, well, it's right in the face of the cat, like, oh my gosh, that's gonna be too much. It's small, it's light, you can see it, but it's not, hi, I'm here, look at me. I don't want my signature. It should be clear. And I have seen people sign their work on the back. Don't sign your work on the back. The name is good. That's like, if it's gonna be a value, it's gonna be because of your name. Put it on the front. But also, I don't need it like Bob Ross used to do these big, bold red signatures, and maybe they weren't that big, but they were like in your face. I prefer something a little bit more subtle. So let me show you over here. There we go. Nice little cat. Do you want to learn to paint and draw, but you don't have any experience, or your drawing skills aren't that good? Join over 1,100 students and follow along with over 300 painting and drawing lessons. There are over 675 hours worth of lessons and new ones every week. just waiting to turn you into a master. The great thing about these classes are that you get to do them from your own home in your own time. If you are taking in-person classes, often it's very hard where you're either falling behind, you're trying to rush to keep up with other students, or you're working faster than the other students waiting for them to catch up to you. With my classes, there is no time limit. You can work at your own pace, whatever feels comfortable for you.